Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gus Wennerveld. Good morning to everybody joining us from the United States. Welcome to our Cafe Talk session organized by FarmTech Society together with GreenTech and Indoor Farming Netherlands about the value of data benchmarking in indoor farming. My name is Gus Wennerveld. I am the co-founder and board member of FarmTech Society and also project lead for the Field Lab Vertical Farming in the Netherlands. With me today, and then let's move again. Today we've already seen a number of talks that show actually the value of sharing data and information to build a better industry. It's not just unique to indoor farming, but it's also very much important for the rest of horticulture. And we've discussed this with, for instance, the stories about the Lausitz project in Germany, or about data-driven horticulture just now on the stage in the main hall, or also just here, the session on greenhouse design. These sessions are all available online, and if you haven't had a chance to join them before, please look them up online. With me today, I have three guests who are going to share their views on data benchmarking. On my left here is Tisha Livingston, the CEO of Infinite Acres. And Infinite Acres is a turnkey provider of vertical farms, also offering managed services for indoor farms. And Tisha is also a board member of FarmTech Society. Welcome, Tisha.
Thank you.
On my right here is Michele Butterini, who is with Delphi Research. Delphi is a company that offers research for horticulture in general. Michele is a plant scientist, specializing in researching comparing the growth performance of indoor farms and looking at how you can get better results out of those farms. Hope I said that correctly. And finally, behind me, I think, is Francis already online?
Yeah, I'm here behind you.
There, Francis. I didn't see you. Francis Beaumont de Oliveira from Liverpool University, or University of Liverpool. He's working with FarmTech Society on developing data benchmarking methods to characterize the economic performance and also predict the economic performance of indoor farms and helping us to better understand what works and what doesn't work. So thank you all for being here. Let me start by asking Francis to share a few minutes of a little bit of a short introduction of yourself and the work that you've been doing on data benchmarking.
Thank you very much, Gus, for the introduction. And I feel really privileged to be here today and to be part of the discussion virtually. So thank you for the invitation. So I'm a PhD researcher based at the University of Liverpool in the Institute for Risk and Uncertainty. And I've spent the last several years looking at vertical farming and seeing where I can best have an impact that would kind of ripple through the literature, especially looking at economic viability and interviewing farms and working in farms, trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. So two of the main pain points that I've come across are economic viability and standardization and a lack of data. Now, this is a really tricky one because there's some really phenomenal projects going on globally, but there's a real duplication of R&D technologies and development cycles. And people are locking themselves into various technologies for several years, not necessarily knowing how much it's going to cost or how much labor is going to be involved, whether their software is going to be adaptable and to work with their software. There's a lot of uncertainty about the operations and financial projections, especially, that could be avoided and speed up development. So my mission has been to try and integrate lessons learned from operating in shuttered projects by kind of understanding what the economics are and the kind of resource consumption to be able to build a model, as well as having that hard quantitative data. I wanted to examine what are the kind of managerial reasons for these unsuccessful farms, the shuttered farms, to understand lessons learned. As I think some of these failures or kind of shuttered farms are a treasure trove of insights of what doesn't work that can inform further developments. So in this economic analysis, I also consider key performance metrics, including environmental resource consumption and financial metrics. But because there was so little data, even the people I interviewed didn't have the data to hand or weren't willing to share it. I had very partial data, so I created a novel method that allows for people to model regardless of the fact that they don't have all the information. So it captures that uncertainty and is able to provide worst case and best case scenarios of probability. Now, this is important, especially as innovation is happening so quickly. For example, I've yet to see any peer-reviewed literature with regards to, or data on robotics efficiency in vertical farming or indoor ag. So focusing on benchmarking specifically, they say what gets measured gets managed. And I think benchmarking, common definitions and standardized metrics would accelerate research in the space and accelerate paths to viability, allow fact checking that we all know there's a lot of misinformation going around. And it's almost impossible for growers and researchers to trial all conditions. So that would have accelerated my research, and I know will accelerate lots of other people's research in space. Lastly, I think we just need a more distributed network for innovation if we want to understand how nature operates at a really deep level, whilst considering and balancing the economical and technological restraints and limitations. So that's me.
Thank you very much. One question perhaps is where do you get your data from? Who are your data contributors?
So that's private and confidential, but I've interviewed maybe just over 16 farms and consultants who are anonymous, but I would interview them from all over the world via Zoom in the pandemic and in person visiting their farms pre-pandemic.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll definitely come back to you on this one. Next, I would like to give the word to Michele. Can you speak a little bit about your research and how this also looks at benchmarking and comparing growth performance?
Yes. So I am a researcher at Delphi Improvement Center. It's not much that I'm a researcher in this company, but I've been immediately involved in this field lab research project that is led by Gas. And what we are doing is trying to perform the same experiment with the same condition in vertical farms that have been built by different companies. So we have a different hardware, but the same so-called plant recipe. And this project started because we expected, we had the hypothesis that in the end, even if we have the same growing condition, and you try to be as tedious as possible in monitoring and uniforming the growth environment, in the end, you will get different results. How different? That's also the research question, the overall research question of this project, and not just difference in the overall, let's say, indicator that you choose that could be yield, but also in the uniformity of your yield. So, and this is a central topic that has to be absolutely, let's say, tackled as soon as possible, because that's about managing expectation. We know that we can perform that much, but how to perform that much is always more difficult than the theory, let's say. So I also faced a similar issue in my previous job when I was working at Wageningen University, being involved in a due diligence for an investment fund to decide whether to enter or not as an investor in a vertical farm. And they asked for a benchmark, but well, we couldn't do a very good job because there are not much available. We evaluated the company on the technology, but saying whether this company is better than another company, it's quite hard at the moment. So you can understand also the point of view of an investor. They're taking very big risks, and we want to, let's say, avoid or at least reduce this risk.
Thank you. And I think also from the work that we've been doing in the field lab, it's quite evident that having the same growth recipe in general doesn't lead to the same results.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's I think some other work. You go ahead.
Yeah, and one thing, and that's why historically in the tradition of research in plant science, we don't consider an experiment in one growth chamber as meaningful. You need to replicate at least, well, now I'm throwing a number, but don't take me, but like 4 or 5 times, because we know that every time you make the same experiment in the same growth chamber, I can show you many papers that show you differences, and the fact that we don't know why doesn't mean it's not magic. Something went differently, but we cannot control everything, even if we are control freak because we are control environment agriculture. But we cannot control everything. What changed? So even when you have the same growth chamber, you run the same experiment in different moments, you may have different results. So imagine when you have different hardware.
Thank you. Finally, Tisha, I would like also your viewpoint from industry and from a provider of technology to also what you think you can do or cannot do maybe with sharing data.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I'm Tisha Livingston, CEO of Infinite Acres.
And perhaps
And
maybe
if
one
we-
thing, you
yeah.
did prepare a slide,
I
think.
did prepare. I
So
did
let's pull
prepare
it
a
up.
slide. If we could pull that up. While we're pulling up the slide, I kind of wanted to share a little bit. I have two passions in life, or two passions I want to talk about with you guys. One of them is controlled environment agriculture and figuring out how to use technology to be able to change the way the world eats, to be able to change food and food supply, so that everyone is afforded and has available to them fresh, healthy produce. The second one, little known fact maybe, except for some that know me, is it's all about cost reduction. It's all about benchmarking. It's about figuring out how to drive the right unit economics so that we can see the first of my passions actually come true to life, which is being able to hit the right unit economics and make it affordable to everyone. In the vertical farming industry, I'm a co-founder of 80 Acres Farms, and as a startup company and a company that's wanting to expand in this space, you have to raise a lot of capital. This is a very capital-intensive business. And to be able to do that in a very early new industry, you're looking at pioneers, you're looking at proof of concept. And as you do that, the cost of capital is very expensive. And if you look at the chart on the left, it talks about the technology and the industry maturity, that purple line, talking about the value capture, where you have pioneers, proof of concept, acceptance, differentiation, and then finally continued expansion. So you see that the cost of capital, the green line, is extremely high in those early phases, which most of the people in the industry, let's be frank, are either in that pioneer or proof of concept. We all aim to be at acceptance and then differentiation, but our cost of capital is very expensive. So as part of Farm Tech Society, when I was, when we joined, they said, what do you want to be part of? And I said, oh, I really want to be part of the standardization committee, because I want to help figure out how we can change the capital stack. How can you enable investors, give investors the confidence to be able to continue to invest and de-risk this business? And so the way that we do that is, well, the way that we did it in Farm Tech Society is we started talking to investors, and we said, why is it that you haven't invested? And when we talk about investors, we talk about a continuum of lower cost of capital. So, ultimate is getting to debt and being able to get a bank loan or be able to borrow against a pension fund or something along those lines. Very expensive is that VC capital or high net worth individuals who are willing to give you money. So how do you move along the continuum where we continue to develop information and standards and benchmarking so the industry can de-risk and feel more and more comfortable about getting into vertical farming? So really, my two passions are coming together. I want to be able to expand as a business. I want to be able to figure out how to change that capital stack, so I'm able to get into lower cost of capital while we expand. And I also, as part of Farm Tech Society, want to understand what those investors are needing to do, needing to know, so that we can move along that continuum. And what we found as part of Farm Tech Society is really there's three main drivers: economics, market, and typology. And the investors, they want to understand what your EBITDA is. They want to understand that it's consistent. They want to understand what your capital efficiency is. So if we put money into your business, how are we going to return that? How efficient is that? And then also on the market side, what is your customer base? What is the diversification of your crops? So part of what we're trying to do in Farm Tech Society is understand what those investor requirements are, and then ask the vertical farming companies to help contribute that information so that we can start building out that database, building out those standards, building out the understanding of this industry, where we are now, and how we can benchmark to continue to drive this industry forward in a maturation process.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Very insightful, thank you. Maybe building on that, I know Francis has also been working closely with us in the standardization committee to work on these metrics. So Francis, from your research, what can you say are some of the more critical metrics that you found and the better predictors of performance?
Sorry, just unmuting myself. Yeah, I think all the metrics really tie to unit economics and what drives the profitability of a farm, because that's really the most important driver. And there's a lot of farmers just kind of almost treading water trying to stay afloat economically. So firstly, the key operational metrics that I have that I think are most important are annual energy productivity, so kilowatt hours per kilogram, which can reportedly be halved according to the Japanese plant factory literature after maybe say 4 or 5 years, and according to Moore's law. There's also annual labor productivity, so man hours per kilogram of produce, annual crop density, how much can you stack into a space per meter squared and per meter cubed. There's also the sales and customer retention, so linking those sales and customer sales to the unit economics and the produce you're producing. And then aggregating that yield data to create an operational history that can display continuous learning and improvement with decreasing volatility. Lastly, the financial metrics, so basic unit economics, revenue mix, typical CapEx expenditures for different components, the CapEx per plant site, payback period, and financial risk, which is maybe cash flows falling below a specified threshold and incorporating probability within your cash flow predictions.
Wonderful. Does this also match a little bit? And maybe we'll have a bit of a discussion here, Michele, from what you've seen. Of course, these are all quite economical performance metrics. Can you say anything about the quality of the growing, how you can predict some results there, or what you can tell from the growth operation?
Yes. So the thing is, like, I don't want to give an answer that is just. I don't know the answer for real, but what I know is like we have to sit down among companies, and because we know what we measure more or less, like crop growth, leaf area, leaf temperature. There are a classic set of parameters that are measured already in greenhouses, and we can more or less copy paste, take the blueprint of that, and follow the same for vertical farming. But at the same time, there are also some parameters that we don't monitor yet, and we are still trying to understand what are the really important one to monitor. Like what we see now, what we believe is a driving problem during our field lab experiment is indeed the microclimate, specifically the differences in wind speed, and that is huge in affecting leaf temperature, transpiration, and in the end also crop growth. So yes, it will be important to gather that, but how to gather this, where to gather it, which granularity to reach. These are things that has to be agreed. We have to find in the phenotyping community. That is traditionally, until now, very much still in the research, like in the academic side, but also in some private companies. But so they are quite ahead in developing like common standards and common database. And for example, they have an initiative called MIAPE. That's the acronym for minimum information, but basically it's a set of traits of the growth condition, of the climate condition, and the plant traits that are gathered for every experiment in every facility that decide to adhere to this, let's say, common standard. So we should, doesn't matter really what, but we should take a set of classic growth parameter, measure them in the same way, and at least focus on a minimum set of traits.
Thank you. Then maybe over to Tisha, because you're from the business side of things,
right.
And we've seen, I think, some great examples of things that are quite worthwhile measuring, but are also sensitive information to many people, and also important to your competitive advantage. So why would a company want to do this?
Well, yeah, good question. So I think there's a couple reasons. One is the work that Delphi is doing and many others are doing in driving yield is super important, because when you look at the cost parameters in unit economics, basically we are climatizing and lighting up a room, and that's a relatively fixed cost. So for us to be able to hit the right unit economics, it's all about improving the yield, improving the packable yield, being able to get as much product into a package using the resources we have. And from my perspective, certain recipes are going to work, like you had mentioned, in maybe one system, and they're not going to work the same way in a second system. So the recipes, which is what everybody guards, to me isn't as important as understanding the unit economics and understanding where everyone is on the continuum of really being able to provide democratized food and being able to provide profitability to a business where they can afford to pay it back. So I believe many of those parameters and those types of things are really pre-competitive. And one thing that we had talked about earlier, when I have a couple of friends in the greenhouse industry here in the Netherlands, and they tell this wonderful story about how when the greenhouse industry started, everyone struggled and everyone was working independently. And then they decided that there were going to be growers met on Saturday mornings in different greenhouses. And they started talking and collaborating and talking about the problems they had, talking about their yields, talking about issues, and together as a community, they solved it. And from that is how the Dutch greenhouse industry really became such a powerhouse. It's about collaboration. It's about elevating the level of information for everyone, for even your competitive set, so that the industry is strong and the industry is doing a better job. So from Infinite Acres, 80 Acres perspective, we're very willing to share that pre-competitive information, maybe not all of the parameters that you're talking about for a vertical farm for a recipe, because honestly, I don't think they're relevant, but I think there is a lot of relevant information that we should be sharing. And I think Farm Tech Society is a wonderful way for us to be able to do that in a neutral ground and really be able to work together, because really driving unit economics down through benchmarking, standardization, understand where people are, then drive educational programs to help elevate all of the industry is really how we're going to be able to make this industry strong and really make something of it and be able to change the way the world eats.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe a question to perhaps all three of you is, so we have this initiative within Farm Tech Society that's trying to put this together, where we are collecting data from participating companies and trying to make sense of them. Again, if I'm running a vertical farming operation, or I'm a technology provider or a knowledge provider, what do I stand to gain by sharing some of my carefully guarded information? So you need to give something, but what can you get back? How can you make that a little bit more tangible? Maybe to start with you, Francis.
Firstly, just to echo the sentiment that Tisha was saying, I think you see Japan as well for vertical farming. They're the global leaders in that space, and they're a few years ahead of us. But they started off being research funded, state funded, and their sector is much more collaborative. And I think this has paid off in spades for them, as you see in the Netherlands as well. I don't think this is a zero-sum game. There's a big demand for food. And if we share that data and make it public, we'll reap the advances in science and in technology, and seeing that technology evolve much more quickly, that people can focus on problems such as business and the actual business models and providing that food as affordable as possible to people, as opposed to thinking about how they can grow the crops in the first place. Like Tisha says, these crop growth recipes I think people don't know how to share that data, because it's quite a lot of information that's recorded in different ways across different businesses. But to date, there hasn't really been a platform that allows people to share that information. I know Open Ag Initiative tried, and they fell flat on their face. But Farm Tech Society is trying to create a platform that allows people to share their information safely and privately in a way that hopefully will be more accessible, and with incentives, making it a reason to join and participate in information. By providing information, you might get access to the information in return, as well as access to compare your farm operation to others, typical food safety protocols, environmental impact assessment. I think the list goes on, but it's really about understanding what people would like to get out of it, so we can build the best platform for everyone. I hope that answers your question.
Well, yes, and also a follow-up question maybe for Tisha then is, how do companies join, and how does this safe and comfortable data sharing work?
Yeah, so we have a committee that meets on a weekly basis, and we are developing that platform right now. And so if you want to join Farm Tech Society, reach out to us, and we're happy to talk about membership. And as part of the members, you have the opportunity to be part of this committee or education committee or a policy committee and really start making an impact in the industry. From a data sharing perspective, that's what we're working on now in collaboration is how do you collect information in a very safe way so that it's anonymized and then turned around and utilized for the betterment of the industry. And so we are still exploring that. That's the stage or phase that we're in with this initiative right now, is identifying who the provider will be to help us build out the database, making sure that it's secure. And while we're doing that, we have received a lot of feedback from the investor community as to what it is that they're looking for so that they can begin that de-risking of the industry. And now we're starting to speak to many CEA operators, and we're finding that there are people out there that are willing to share data. 80 Acres is willing to share data. I know that there's others out there that are willing to share data for the betterment of the industry and really helping elevate everyone so that we can de-risk, we can get into a better capital stack, and we can expand the industry.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And then maybe also finally, Michele, just maybe a bit of a stingy question, but you work for a company that actually sells information and that sells knowledge. So on one hand, it's really quite important for you, of course, to have access to the information and to be able to make your own models and define new knowledge. On the other hand, also, do you think that a company like Delphi can play a good role in this kind of collaborative environment where everybody chips in a little bit and gets a little bit more back?
100%. It's well, I think it's the only way to survive also for a company like Delphi. This is where the world is going, like more open source, or at least we need big data. Everyone needs big data, and they can be anonymized. That's very important. And but if we don't follow this trend, we are out, period. And so I truly believe that whoever we collaborate, we will promote and explain the value of sharing. But then, of course, it's up to the client to let us do or not do with their data.
And maybe one follow-up question there is also, you discussed a little bit about how you're collecting data in indoor farms. How is it actually different in an indoor farm compared to a standard greenhouse? It's a very, I mean, we are just saying, for example, that we have larger scale in a greenhouse, so the microclimate is less relevant, is still relevant, but since we are still in a developing phase now, we are observing ununiformity that is higher than expected in a vertical farm. So in that case, we need to focus on data that are less interesting, like the high granularity of wind speed, VPD, temperature, air temperature. In greenhouse, this is not necessary at this granularity level. Okay. This is an example. Yep.
And I wanted to give a message, like this is very, let's say, metaphorically speaking, like there is the bubble tower is a kind of a tower, is a vertical farm in a way, and it fell because of the fact that the languages were separated. Everything collapsed because there was not a common language. There were just many dialects. And as Nico, your colleague, said, we need an Esperanto for, or at least a minimum set of to communicate. Like it's English now.
Yes.
That was Greek in the back in the days, or so. We don't have to share everything, but we need a language, that English, that allowed us to talk to each other.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very nice summary, I think, even of what we're trying to say here. Let's all speak the same language. We will continue to do this here for the people here in Amsterdam with the drinks that we're offering at 5 o'clock back in the main room where we're also announcing the collaboration between Farm Tech Society and Indoor Farming Netherlands, also an industry association here based here in the Netherlands. and where we can discuss this much more. So thank you everybody for joining, and hopefully see you for our next event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.